Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing a report for the full moon in Sagittarius on the 29th of May, which is at 2:19 PM Universal Time, which here in the UK translates as 3:19 PM because the clocks are forward as part of the summer months. And I'll be outlining some of the key themes for this full moon and explaining what the energies are kind of doing and what kind of lessons we can potentially learn at this time. Now, before I go into that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the full moon doesn't control us in any way, shape or form. Like any other astrology, it's just a map of the kind of energies around us and what kinds of themes are being outlined. It doesn't make us do anything. We choose how we respond to any given energy. It's more like understanding the weather. If you know what the weather's doing, we can then make a more conscious choice as the actions that we take. Now, in terms of the full moon in Sagittarius, we have the Sun in Gemini at the moment, and this is a time where it's about the left side of the brain, if you like, or the rational side. So we're talking about the senses, so trying to look at the objective reality of things and gathering the facts together. So Gemini is, generally speaking, very logical and left brain thing. It deals with everyday reality, so it's dealing with thinking, communication, but more importantly our perception, because this underlies things. But perception is affected by our personal beliefs and our personal conditioning. So during this time the main focus needs to be looking at where is our perception of our reality clouded, and how can we expand our perception with communicating with other people. But if we're not careful, we become too fixated in the logical and rational mind and forget to pay attention to the intuition. But also we can get so focused on the details in front of us that we forget about the big picture, so we can't see the forest for the trees. So this is where the moon in Sagittarius comes in. The moon in Sagittarius reminds us to look at the big picture, look at the world view of things, or look at our own personal worldview. What is our understanding of the world around us, and how accurate is it? Because it's also like Gemini asks questions. It's that curiosity to know things, to gather information. Sagittarius is about trying to understand. It's trying to answer the questions, trying to assign the meaning to things, and it's about our personal philosophy and worldview. So how do we make sense of the experiences that we have? How do we make sense of the world around us? And how do our beliefs play a big role in shaping our perceptions of things, or shaping our understanding of things? So the moon in Sagittarius is about reminding us to keep our minds open, because Gemini and Sagittarius are both mutable signs, which means changeable. They can accommodate or mould themselves in different ways, so they're very adaptable as such. But what often happens due to the very human fear of change is that we become too fixated on certain ways of thinking or certain ways of believing, and we don't leave ourselves open to new ways of experiencing things, of new perceptions, of new beliefs. And therefore it severely limits our potential, it severely limits our understanding of things, and it can disempower us because we don't realise that there's a better way of perceiving things, there's a better belief to hold. Because how many times do we stop ourselves from doing something because we believe we're not worthy enough, or we believe we're not good enough, or we believe we don't have all the information we need? And this full moon asks us to look into this. Where do we limit ourselves because we're too fixed in our thinking, too fixed in our beliefs, and not open-minded enough to explore other possibilities, other ways of seeing things, and other truths? Sagittarius is about that quest for truth. It's about trying to understand truth as it is, the truths that unite us. So we all have different ways of perceiving things, but there are certain things that unite us collectively that we all have in common. And Sagittarius reminds us to try and focus on this. But in order for us to do that, we also have to let go of the need or tendency to judge others. Usually because we fear being judged ourselves. So we judge ourselves, and as a result of that, there's only so long we can do that before we start judging other people. So part of this full moon is an opportunity to reflect on where do we tend to judge people, where do we have a tendency to think we know the truth and other people don't, when actually the other person may have an equally valid truth or an equally valid belief. It may be in slight conflict with ours, but if we look at the two beliefs and try and understand how the two sides of the same issue, then we can achieve a much more empowered perception of the world, a much more empowered worldview, and we then develop a belief system within ourselves that is much closer to the truth, is much more open to new ways of being, and therefore much more tolerant of different ways of perception. And this enables us to not feel threatened by other ways of seeing things or other belief systems. It allows us to try and break past the beliefs that are based in separation and move towards a belief system that's linked with unity and linked with spiritual truth and the fact that we are all interconnected. Now, in terms of the ruler of the full moon, Jupiter, he's retrograde in Scorpio at the moment, so this is also a time of reflecting, but with Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio, it's about the deepest recesses of the minds. It's our deepest attachments, our deepest fears, and the deepest wounds that prevent us from achieving that transpersonal consciousness that Sagittarius marks the beginning of. Scorpio is the gateway to that, but unless we actually traverse the Scorpio terrain through facing our darkness and assimilating it with our light, if we don't bring the light of consciousness to it and become aware of our own deepest wounds or deepest attachments, and have the courage to let go of the ones which disempower us, that leave us thinking that we're powerless and limited, and instead learn to break free of these thought patterns, learn to break free of these emotional programs from long ago, and recognise that by letting go of these patterns and these conditionings, we can surrender the need to try and control everything out of fear, and instead we empower ourselves through transforming the mind, through renewing it, through getting rid of any obsessive thought patterns, any obsessive beliefs or any obsessive emotional triggers, and instead feel them, face them and release them. If we do this, then we make it a lot easier for ourselves to achieve that transpersonal consciousness in Sagittarius, whereby instead of focusing on separation, we start to look at a more unified way of seeing things, and we start to look at how we all have more in common than we realise, but because we have this egoic tendency to try and focus on our differences so we feel special, we then end up ignoring our common humanity. So it's learning to honour our common humanity whilst obviously staying true to who we are. It doesn't mean that we then try and conform to other ways of seeing things or other belief systems, but by seeking to understand one another and trying to break through the desire to unite through uniformity and instead honour diversity, then we can achieve a greater degree of peace both within ourselves and without, because by making peace with different beliefs and overcoming that cognitive dissonance that often happens when we encounter some of the challenges of our current understanding, if we have the courage to face that cognitive dissonance and be curious about these other belief systems rather than fearing them, we can then see where is the common ground between them, what is the actual truth, the threads of truth that unite all these different perspectives together, so that we achieve a worldview that is based in truth and based in love rather than based in lies, deceit and fear. We also have some beneficial aspects. I'll go through them very quickly, but we have the lunar nodes are actually in a fairly harmonious relationship to the full moon, in the sense that the north node in Leo is sextile to the sun and trine the moon, whilst the south node is sextile to the moon and trine the sun. So the nodal axis in some respects helps us to, or provides outlets for the energy. And we have Mars close to the South Nodes in Aquarius, and also forming the sextile to the Moon and trine to the Sun. So these provide outlets. So with North Nodes in Leo, this is about understanding who we are, or having the courage to embrace play, to develop self-confidence, and to follow our hearts. To, rather than living in our heads, it's about coming down and bringing the head and the heart together, so that we're pursuing things that are right for who we are, that allow us to be our authentic selves, and allow us to develop that emotional warmth that generates that companionship with one another. It's about developing that ability to love ourselves, and through this be able to receive love off other people and truly give love to other people, because we have our own wellspring of love within us. But for this to happen, we have to explore or understand, where does our tendency to remain aloof hold us back? Where do we have a tendency to go with the crowd, or where do we always try and seek more knowledge before taking any action? Where do we need to overcome these pitfalls in order to be our best selves, in order to shine our light? And through shining our own light and being the best versions of ourselves, the world actually benefits, because we're much stronger as individuals as a result. And if we stay true to who we are and shine our light in whatever situation we're in, it gives other people permission to do the same. Because more often than not, people do at some level want to be more free or be more authentic, but without seeing someone already doing it, they almost feel like they need permission to do it. So by us being the best, or striving to be the best versions of ourselves, to be loving, be generous of spirit, and to radiate that emotional warmth and generosity of being towards other people, ideally would then provide the opportunity for those people to make that same step, to start initiating changes in their own lives, to make sure that what they're doing is actually aligned with who they are. But we can't force it on anyone, and we never should try and do that. It's not our place to tell people what they should be doing with their lives. It's not our place to try and make people or win people over to our point of view. It's about sharing our own perspectives, sharing our own beliefs, but not in a way of trying to preach it to other people. It's about essentially saying, well, this is how we see it, this is how we personally believe about it, but what do you think? What's your perception of it, and what is your perspective? What do you believe? And so having this conscious dialogue with one another, without the hidden agenda of trying to get people to conform to our way of being or our way of seeing things, if we can have that open and honest communication with one another, without the agenda of trying to win people to our way of seeing things, without preaching, just having that open and honest engagement with one another, where we're listening to one another. It's obviously important that we, to some extent, remain sceptical of different points of view, so we're not just taken in with something that could be potentially dangerous. We still need to be prepared to listen, because when we hear a truth, even if it's uncomfortable, we know that it's a truth because of how it makes us feel. So this is a time for us to have these conversations, to listen to other perspectives, and let our intuition show us through our feelings what is the truth. Because we know what the truth, we know when we're being presented with something that's truth, because it feels right. It doesn't cause that necessarily uneasiness. It may cause a bit of discomfort if we've been clinging to a comforting lie, but if something is the truth, we know it deep down because of how it makes us feel. So the full moon is about bringing the rational and the intuitive together, so that the mind operates at its highest capacity. So both sides are working together. The logic and rationality brings the facts together, whilst the intuition pieces it all together. It all shows us how everything fits together to the big picture and not just linear logic. Just understanding how everything is interconnected rather than just separate, isolated bundles of data, as it were. So there's a lot to take on board there, but I hope this forecast or this explanation for the full moon in Sagittarius is useful. May bring you many insights and a greater degree of understanding of your own perceptions and belief systems. It may also provide you with an opportunity to release any perceptual biases or limiting beliefs that stop you being the best versions of yourself, so that you can embrace a more empowered way of being, and you develop greater self-belief and greater willingness to embrace change, to embrace new information which may go against what we're used to thinking, but may actually be closer to the truth than what we currently understand. And if we're all doing this, if we're all prepared to open our minds up to the full capacity as best we can, through being open to new experiences, open to different ways of thinking, different ways of perceiving, then sharing our own insights and listening to the insights of others, we move close to the truth of reality, the truth of the world around us, and we can break down the walls of separation that we've built up through clinging to belief systems and clinging to perceptions based on conditioning, rather than being willing to question whether our understanding of things is complete, and where we can achieve a greater degree of understanding through listening to one another. So that if we can spend more time listening and less time talking, we can learn so much more about the world around us, and we can expand our perceptions, expand our understanding, and move closer to the truth of who we are and the truth of how we are connected with everything around us. And therefore we need to make sure that whatever actions we're taking, whatever words we're communicating, are as honest and considerate as possible, and are geared towards being as truthful as we can, and ideally being as empowering to other people as we can, without preaching, without telling them what they should do. It's up to each and every one of us to test the waters, or test our understanding, and to achieve a deeper understanding of who we are, why we're here, and how we're connected with the world around us, so that we become much more conscious individuals and more empowered as a result of having an open mind that becomes an ally rather than a limiting enemy. May this full moon bring you many blessings and an empowered perspective of yourself and the world around you. Take care and be blessed.